part of us were sad that it's so much more effort because this used to be this effortless thing.
Welcome to the Style and Vibes podcast with me, Michaela. I'll be giving you the inside scoop on music, fashion, culture, and more from Caribbean celebrities and tastemakers across the globe, pushing our culture with authenticity and, of course, style and vibes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Style and Vibes podcast with yours truly, Michaela. If you are new here, welcome to the family. If you're returning, welcome back, family. And today is really a family thing because the executive producer in the building today, Carrie-Ann, tell the people what are going.
Boy, everything are going and nothing are going at the same time, but everything is everything. It's typical Jamaicans. We speak in parables. What everything are going and nothing are going, but everything is everything.
But I understand still, you know? And then you say everything is everything, and I know the same thing. Oh boy. So I had to tap you because we have so many different offline conversations around today's music and keeping up. And with your Carry On Friends community, you kind of pose this question from a cultural standpoint. So rather than, as we do, always chat out an episode versus recording the episode, I say, you know what? Me not chat it out today. We're gonna record it and produce it for the people then. So let's start with I think music.
I have something to say. I want to say that was a very proud moment, you know, self-restraint to say, zip it. Let's record it. Let's put it on wax. Well, you don't put nothing on wax no more.
I like it. When I talk music, when I put it on wax.
Yes.
We are getting better. We are getting better because, you know, you and I would talk out a whole entire topic and then can't record the episode because we already done talk. And then you and I know, like, it's not the same energy than when we have the conversation the first time. And I think this one is particularly interesting because we've had tidbits of this conversation, but we haven't had a holistic conversation. And it's really sparked by the question from a cultural standpoint that you pose to your community. So I want you to share it with the Style and Vibes family so we can kick off the right way.
Yeah, so as you know, I've long since been talking about, and I've recorded multiple podcasts where I mentioned some matriculate out, dancehall, dancing and stuff, because a large part of my identity growing up in high school and even for a while was like, I was that girl who had the Metro Media, the Stone Love cassette, them, and know all of the new dance. And that was still well into aspects of my adulthood. And it was during times producing Style and Vibes, I realized that I was relying on what you were suggesting to the audience in that season where you were talking about the songs that you enjoyed. And I kind of said to you, like, I don't know if I could keep up with this. And what really triggered the recent conversation was Liquor Cause, our niece, whoever she wanted, if, the title rotate depending on our mood, sent me a text that Idonia is celebrating his 20 years in dancehall, and it's at, UBS Arena or whatever.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath, she sent me, say, Cartel come. I'm going to look upon it. The first one that really got me was Idonia, because I was like, I remember. And then in my head, I'm like, tune. Like, and I was like, oh, one year when I went to ATI before it was Dream Weekend, whatever, I remember seeing him down there. And I'm like, yo, 20 years. Like, that's really a stark, like, yo, 20 years. And then me say, no, me good. Even though the lineup have other people that I would want to see, but I was like, the last Idonia song I'm literally singing was pre-pandemic. That is the song that's in my phone. I'm not hearing anything new Idonia. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Because me no want go in at the arena, everybody vice out new tune and then me stand up there. You know, like when you sing song and you know so somebody they flap the word of the song and they not sing it right. I don't want to be that auntie. I don't want to be that auntie when I know the tune and they mumble and they replace lyrics with what lyrics is not there. And I was like, I'm cool. And so I posed this to my audience. Am I the only one who's experiencing this? And, you know, there were people who replied and said, no, they're not. I wasn't the only one. And we kind of talked about how they were finding new music. And so different people told me different ways they were listening to new music, or how some people are just sticking to what they are familiar with, what was in their era, and that era varies. And then I actually had a follow up poll that says, which aspects of your identity or culture that you are not necessarily leaving behind, but not keeping up with. And I gave multiple options, and an overwhelming amount, over almost 67%, said they weren't keeping up with music. And I remember I called you and I was like, yo, we have some data to have the conversation. And on top of that, so I could round out the story, I sent the results, in the newsletter follow up, and one of my engaged audience members, Mikey T, said, listen, I have a lot to say about this music thing. And I said, I'm sure. And, you know, we'll get into that. But he talked about, the slackness argument, which makes sense because that's what people use. But you and I know that the slackness argument is easily debunked. You understand? And I said, no, it's actually more nuanced than that. And so in this conversation, we're going to go into the nuance from an identity perspective and the other things that are impacting that, why we are like not keeping up with music. And the survey actually highlighted something else that I'm excited to get into.
All right. So yes, I think what was interesting when you came to me, and I was just like, okay, now let's really have a conversation about it, because even myself, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not necessarily hanging out in the different spaces and places, but I do like to discover new music. So I'm constantly looking for new music, and I'm on the lookout. And because of the nature of the podcast, I do get a lot of like submissions of new music, whether they be well known or not well known at all. I get the gamut of it, and I can definitely tell you, the digital age has allowed for so much new music to be released. And I think it's not the sole issue around keeping up with new music, but I think that it's the biggest one that we have,
Yes.
particularly in the Napster and LimeWire and after time frame, right? Because you know during that era, you went from having a cassette tape that had 45 to 90-minute, 120-minute time span on two sides of the tape. Previously, you also had CDs. Vinyl can only hold but so many different songs, and now you literally have so many songs at your fingertips. So the sheer volume of music, in 2024, there was more music released in a single day than the entire year of 1989. So it's like, just putting that into perspective, 120,000 new tracks are uploaded on average every day to these DSPs and these streaming services. Not to say that all of that is good music and quality. We can have the quality conversation all day, but I think that that is one of the biggest barriers to kind of keeping up, quote unquote, with new music, is the sheer volume. And then when you look at Caribbean music, particularly reggae and dancehall, we've always been a singles driven market where tunes after tunes after tunes are released without, they're just released. They have no real, necessarily, they're not tied to a particular project, or now with rhythms not being a thing, it's not like, it's not as big of a deal as it once was, in terms of identifying the rhythms and knowing that aspect of the culture, because juggling doesn't happen in the same way anymore either. So I think there's a lot in terms of um keeping up with new music feels like a different task now. That is also coupled with us getting older.
Yeah, so you touched on a couple of things, and I'm like trying to get my notes. So, you talked about, and I want to touch on that. You talk about the technology and you talk about rhythms, right? Those were like the markers by which, so let me back up. Rhythms was a marker by which people would have some kind of familiarity with music. So you may not like all the songs on a rhythm, but you were able to identify that this is that rhythm, the Diwali rhythm, or this rhythm, or that rhythm, the stink, or whatever, buzz, whatever it was, right? You kind of had a general understanding, and if you hear a song on the rhythm, you were open to, so if once the rhythm instrumental kind of come on, you kind of were open to the song to hear what else would come on that rhythm. That's one. So with the fragmentation of the music industry, it shifted from passive discovery, right? So growing up, we're in the car, we're listening to music, and we had, in addition to shifting from radio, we have a contraction of the number of Caribbean radio stations, or even the shows that were on mainstream radio. Specifically, I'm in Brooklyn. So, like David Levy is pushed much later into the night. I think he's like on late Saturday night, but he was on Sunday nights versus I can't remember no more, versus Bobby Candace and Jabba. I knew that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on a Sunday growing up, that was the slot, right? And they're not in that slot anymore. You have the modern DJs who are Caribbean inspired that will play a tune, but you don't really have the same dedication on those frequency that we can easily get. And then with internet radio, most people don't have that. And I also want to point out, as I was thinking about this, and maybe I'm really aging myself, I used to work in a law firm and everybody had a little radio at their desk, or in their office. And it wasn't loud to the point where, why are all these radios on, right? It was so low because we were sitting in cubicles that you had to really be in the person's cubicle space to kind of hear what was playing on the radio. And so I constantly knew that from the morning to the afternoon, I was going to be on Kiss. And then when Michael Bays then came on in the afternoon, we are going to switch to, you know what I mean? And so because we're not listening via radio, which was our main source of being introduced to music, because what the technology is great and it's given access to many people, but there's this element of human curation in a way that we really validated. And so I told you the story, and I know I'm calling a bunch of names, but it really illustrates the point, right? This happened over a year ago. I'm picking up my mother from the airport and we're driving home, and it's on Hot 97, and Funk Master Flex is introducing a new track. He plays 30 seconds of the track and pull up the tune the whole way, the whole 15-minute ride back home. He pulls up the track. And at one point, my mom said, am I going to play the full song? We haven't changed the station because we're waiting for the whole song to play. But it brought us back to an era where the DJ on the radio now got us dash out a song for we. He might tease it. He might pull it up again. Me get a new tune. He's excited. It's integrated into that show. And so we kind of lose all of that. Now, I figure actively, intentionally figure out what the new song. Then me have to, if me have to go through the social media door, and me can't bother with it. And then what happens is it becomes an echo chamber of whatever the algorithm is feeding, and whatever people are using on their reels and TikTok. That's what everybody's hearing. And then people say, this a song. And then, it's really a selective, a selection of really, maybe a fraction of what's really out there. So technology has really disrupted how we as a people, listen to music. And this last point, Mikey T had kind of said that it is not our job to keep up with music unless it's somebody's job. So like for you running this podcast, or for a DJ. And this is where I wanted to disagree. We keep up with music because it's so much part of our identity. We love music. So what I wanted to go back to on the surveys, over 67% said they weren't keeping up with the music. One option was, are you keeping up with concerts, fetes, carnival? Nobody responded to that, right? So that means that they may not be actively going out and seeking new music, but they're still going out to party and enjoy themselves, right? So it's like, on one end, it's exhausting, and you know this, exhausting to find out what's the new song, but they're still engaging with culture and where they potentially could hear music. They're just not, they just want to be able to be fed or introduced to music in a way that doesn't feel like it's so much work to do.
Yeah. I
So,
think you said a lot of different things. And even going back to the idea of how, so we are a generation that had been fed, right? And this generate, and I think with every generation, we have to put age and place and space into the positioning where, how do you, how, when you were younger, how did you learn about new music? It was radio, it was parties, it was other people sharing. My friend is a DJ, so that, I keep up. They got me the latest. I'm buying a mixtape, or all of those things we no longer do, right? So and that has to do with age, because if you're not actively buying a mixtape or seeking out new mixes in a way, um you're not actively partying in spaces to hear new music, specifically for new music, because you can go out and go to old school parties where, like, when you get older, your experiences in terms of going out needs to be valuable because you have less time.
mhm,
When you are younger, you have more time, discretionary time, to have a bad time, but you're having a bad time with people that you love. And so it also allows you to be more, you and I, remember, we'll go party Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, and Industry Tuesday. Like those were things that we just no longer do them as you get older. And so you're no longer in a place. And radio hasn't broken new artists in a very long time. Like, it's always really been, you already had to have a bubble in the streets. You had to have some sort of recognition of people already talking about you from an industry perspective, or you had to have the backing of some industry gatekeeper, big promoter, DJ, somebody to put a stamp on it and recommend it. And radio right now is the last place. So if a song from TikTok ends up on the radio, that means it's already been played out in that arena of younger consumers as well. And so, in addition to it being fragmented, as we get older, we're no longer, not to say that we're not interested in learning about new music, we're just not in a position to prioritize it over the lifestyle of, I'm running my business, or I'm in my focused in my career. And so some of those social gatherings become premium spots where you're like, I want to go where I'm guaranteed to have a good time. I'm not necessarily guaranteed a good time to go listen to this new artist that I've never heard on a Wednesday evening. Like, is it valuable, and is it a best use of my time? And so we are, as a people, if you're interested, there are really limited places to discover new music. And it's keeping up with podcasts or music people, curators, but there's so many more curators now. Or it's really the streaming services and their recommendations. And that's a whole other conversation around recommendation, because you still hear new music, right? You still know something when you like it, when you do hear it, or you don't like it, and it could be playing all over the radio. and or playing all over whatever your timeline anywhere else, and it could be popular and you're not really that crazy about it. But I think also, like, as we get older, we just have more priorities on your plate. And so music, even though it's this thing that you truly truly love and you want to engage it becomes a chore, whereas it wasn't a chore when you were 20,
Mm-hmm.
because it was just part of like, I remember telling Kirk, I was like, I can't even remember the last time I played music to get ready to go out. And I still go out, but I'm like, somebody got to go to sleep. Somebody, one is watching TV. I don't want to disturb the little one. So I have to wait till I get into my car. And by that time I'm in my car, I'm like, I haven't created my mix. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to go back to whatever is familiar. And so, because I want to hear good music as I'm about to touch the road, but I don't really have, like, it's not as seamless. It is more effort, right? And I think that that's what part of us, we're sad that it's so much more effort, because this used to be this effortless thing.
What we're experiencing, and I've been experiencing for a very long time, everybody always say me all up myself, but it's this transition from youth to like adulthood. We're not quite elder yet, but youth to adulthood, where we feel like, okay, we don't want to keep up with current um music and dance trends. And I mean dance trends because that was big for us. Like, I keep saying, when was the last dance me feel like me can do as big auntie in the dance? Because I'm very mindful. I don't want going to the young people them dance and look like the big woman who not really supposed to be in the young people them dance. You understand what I say? But anyway, and then we start shifting to more
Well, we are more conscious of it because we know what that looked like
looks
growing
like.
up.
We for
We
sure know
still
what
know what it looked like.
like. This won't be me. But we're shifting from keeping up with um the current dance trends and music, and we're shifting to the cultural classics, and kind of what you talked about, we're doing more family centered activities, so we can't really vibes up with self before the party. There are certain songs we can't play. I remember when I went to, I used to go to Jamaica a lot, and my friend would give me like some mix CDs, and this was before Apple and all these things, because he would give me the clean version that plays on Jamaican radio, because say that's the only ones that can play in the house, or with the kids them in the house. You can't play the Racha version. And so these are like the many ways where it feels hard to keep up, and how we can truly say, okay, me just go listen to the mix CD here and go and clean up the house. You can't really do that,
Yeah.
because they're pitting them the boat, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can't do that. So the other thing you kind of said was going out, and I wanted to come back to this idea of the quality of music. So Mikey T was, as a youth, he was defensive because, and I said, yeah, the argument about the music too slack is for social media. When you post it, everybody bound to get some level of engagement. And I said, we can debunk that myth. Everybody is looking at the 90s right now through rose colored lens, and it wasn't like that. Me know some artists where, we are still say that song I really when they play, like, even going back even to the 80s, even before that,
I
like
was
some
just watching
creep.
two videos on Instagram, and one is this girl is singing. She got to she looks younger than me for sure. And she's singing Lady Saw If Him Left on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
house.
I'm like,
And she's singing it like she knows the entire lyrics. And
for
that's an old song. It's not a new song.
that was the era of Power Man. I need you to go hear some of the Power Man
Yes.
song. Them, you're
Yes.
like, what? I
Yes.
remember where I was in high school in ninth grade when one of my classmates, she was just funny. She all she came in and she was like, cock up, cock up. I was like, what is she talking about? Only Position just come out as a song, and everybody I was like, what? you know so all of this, and even going into the 80s, there was this song, I can't remember the name. The song is so creepy because basically the DJ I sing about how him I look on him mother and father, they do adult things, right? And the argument about the music today is more slack it doesn't land for me. And I'll tell you a story. So in 2008, I went to a big woman party. There was a 50th birthday party. Can you imagine? 2008, 50th birthday party. And this older couple, love them. Because, them vibes when them go out, because it's a mixed thing. And you just hear, come on, hear me song. When you come in on me rampage, like that was their song. And so the slackness and whether a song is slack, I think it's just relative to the person. And of course, as you get older, you kind of find it jarring because now you have kids a certain age. And as moms, you're like, oh, you start think about what you was doing. Now you have Pitney at a certain age. But music, if music is introduced in a way where people can get to know it and to experience it, if they're first hearing about it at a party, you're not gonna dance to it. You go stop and you go try to take in the song. And that's not what people want when they go to a party. They want to feel like they're constantly dancing, which is why,
Now,
yes.
now. But when you were 20 and the DJ was like, let me play that new tune, yeah, you're listening because you know that the selector is gonna play something that or you see the artist walking and go at the DJ booth and get them something. So you know like something is about to happen, even if it's not a full-blown performance. And those things really, I think they still happen in Jamaica, but they really don't happen as much here, at least in my experiences. Like breaking of new records, it's like one, and a lot of times people just don't want to be bothered, and I don't know if that's a generational thing or if that is actually factual across the board. So I'd have to ask somebody who's a little bit younger than me like what their scene is looking like. I think even going back to the slackness, I think what Mikey T, and I don't want to like interpret his understanding of it, is there was still a sense of creativity lyrically, right? And I think that today, yes, it is more raunchy, it is more in your face, but there was a certain level of creativity when they were like Vibes Cartel to me is the last of an era because he would make a distinct clean version and a distinct explicit version, and they both were top tier lyrical
Wordplay,
niceness,
innuendo.
wordplay, innuendo. So you could play the entire, it was still slack, but you could play the clean version and lyrically it still sounds the same. The problem I think a lot of young artists are having is they just bleep it out and they think that that's the clean version. And they're not taking the lessons of the older generation and creating a more creative, explicit, and clean version. Because I haven't heard, they
But
just bleep them out.
But I thought in order to get radio play in Jamaica, it's by law that you needed a version that didn't have the bleeps in
A
it.
lot of these songs don't even play on Jamaica
But
radio.
this is what I'm
Like,
saying. That's
oh,
why you can tell the difference. In order
yeah,
to get radio play, the song
yeah.
had to be an entirely different version because there were no bleeps
Yes.
allowed.
But
And
here
so
in the States, you could just bleep it out.
bleep it out.
And
Yeah.
it's not just Jamaican music, reggae, dancehall, soca. It's American music too. Like Sexy Red, they just bleep out the words. Megan Thee Stallion, same thing. Cardi B, same thing. And so they're or they're the rules are a little bit more lenient
Lenient. Yeah.
now than they were before. But there were definitive clean versions and explicit versions, and that I think has changed pretty drastically in the listening experience for
Hmm.
a lot of people. And I really noticed it when TikTok came into play, because I remember when Sinai got on TikTok and I was like, they don't have clean versions of these songs. Cause like I get it, she's not really listening too much for the lyrics. She's really just dancing. She's trying to do the whatever the dance trend is. But now they've become so accustomed to that they don't really understand the difference between there's a time and place. And I think our generation was the last of understanding that there's a time and a place and of where to play certain there are certain songs. Me just skip them even when my mother in another room.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like I know she probably listens to the song and I listen to the song, but I don't feel like it's the right situation when I make it serving Sunday. Then I forgot play, you know.
This remind me of a story. Um, Christine is a very generic name, but Christina told me this was years ago. Christina told me, say her mother come visit, and she in at the house, and the song just come on. Me a drive in from Grange Hill with a pound of the marijuana. Christine lock up.
And she want to go so, but she said,
She lock it up.
she like this. I sing out the window.
Oh God, she lock it
No,
up.
the guy just sung that me carrots, but it's like the I remember I was watching this video, and I'm gonna send it to you. I was watching this video on Instagram, and this group of four older women. You could clearly tell. I think they're like of Asian descent. I don't know where exactly they're from, but they're dancing to Gage's "Dungin' Naya Truth." I'm old enough to remember when that song was initially released, how much backlash it got. Like I'm that old because it was. I remember when it was released, and radio people did not want to play it. People did were like, what kind of slackness is this? This is not our culture, and blah blah blah. No rings on TikTok. Everybody else sing it. It get like this new surgence of, and they're literally dancing because it's been like what they call now a mashup. They've kind of made it like a remix, but it's pretty popular. And I'm just like, poor Gage. I remember he got all the
The smoke.
backlash from Dung in Your Truth, and then come full circle, everything I Dung in Your Truth. No. Like that feels tamed compared to what we hear coming out of the current dancehall sound now.
Yeah, well, I'm not hearing it, but I just also want to
Harry
say,
said, I'm not hearing it.
I don't. How one of I've told you this before. One of the ways, so my husband hears music a lot because when he's in the car, and when I'm in the car for long rides, like I told you about the throwback radio station. I was like, oh shoot, I'm on this. But one of the ways that I discover music, not just new music, but music that came out years ago, but I'm just hearing, is through Music Choice. And the integration of Pandora on these smart TVs is one of the ways that I hear music. So, like the other day, one Chronics I play, and I'm like, "Oh, which Chronic song this?" And I looked, and this was like a older track, and I was like, "I've never heard this song." So it's also again just all these different ways that we have available to consume music, and I'm just like, this is what makes it really hard. Mingo says something
I do,
else on
I
it.
do, I do think that the algorithms are getting better in terms of for that reason, right? Because even I do Apple Music. Occasionally, I'll do stuff on Spotify or even some stuff on YouTube just to kind of see like what is there. And the recommendation they're good about recommending like similar like audio artists, whether it be like you have to scroll to the bottom, or like if you get to the end of a playlist and it plays two or three songs at the end. I do think that it's, but the trap there is that it plays
Similar,
similarness. It's
yeah.
not necessarily that you're going to always discover new music, but I do find that that has been a good angle to kind of passively discover new songs. And they have key playlists that they change frequently, that I do think you can kind of that's probably the easiest, least work related, like follow a playlist that changes frequently and you can hear some new sounds. You might not like it, but at least you'll still listen to some of it.
I think what has worked for me, because I'm not even a follow nobody playlist, because it's made in anyway. Um, because I have Apple Music is constantly telling me when new music is out, and that's largely
Mhm.
based on what's in it.
Yeah.
So the last music you tell me about, One Bounty Killer song come out the other day as we are recording this. May I see if you can me can see which song because me left it in my alerts. If a Bounty song, a Beanie song come out, I've seen it tell me about Luciano, but it's mostly Bounty and Beanie. It suggests to me, which tells you I'm mostly
A lot
Bounty
about
and
your
Bounty and
playlist.
Beanie list.
Yes,
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 a lot
yes.
of Bounty and Beanie
But the
on
challenge, it's not gonna recommend a Shensia song, or it's not gonna recommend a
no.
Stock Ashley,
Oh,
or
C tier.
like
It's
Skilly Bang, or you know what I mean? Like those are the younger crop of artists. A Chronic Law.
listen, 5:06 a.m. Family and Friends featuring Willful Skillful, single by Bounty Killer is now available.
But
So
they do have some other dance hall playlists specifically. Um
I just again, oh, I remember what I wanted to say. So not because I stick to a particular era, I typically tell people, say, listen, 2012 and earlier, I'm solidly in that area. I will listen to other songs past to 2010, but I know 2010 going back, I solidly knew a lot of the songs that were out and new. um I could even push it to 2000, 2012, because by then I have the second pitney, and so it hard for really keep up. But it doesn't mean a song doesn't break through periodically, and a lot of songs break through. um it's just where I hear them for the songs to break through. The other thing too is that in the survey, what's captured is keeping up with language. Like, we don't know the new slang them anymore. And
but
so,
you're not gonna know the new saying. You know, you're not
listen,
young.
but this is
You're
what
not
I'm
young
saying.
people.
We don't know the new slang. And so that sometimes creates a disconnect in how we feel. Like, oh, it feel weird for this braffin in a this, because I know my thing this. And if the song is, you understand, those are like some of the things that
Mhm.
came out in the survey. And so what I've been finding are songs that have an intergenerational appeal, which is the epitome of intergenerational appeal. And I'll put this out here. Beres is on my whiteboard. Michaela knows this, like circled and circled, because Beres is a good example of what happens when people transition from youth to adult, that they go to familiar and cultural classics, and Barris represents that. Barris creates new music, but his catalog of familiar cultural hits will always have him garnering new audiences every year, because every year people are graduating into a different level of maturity, and you want to go to enjoy yourself. Yeah, you go see Barris at Brooklyn, you go up on cruise and see like, you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I told you the story about somebody who, after church, it was his birthday, and I'm said, what, no, was your birthday? And them say, yeah, man. And then the person who is also as old as him starts say, happy birthday, yeah, my friend. And then me say, one more. Like, but these are like in their 70s, but they're aware, because I mean, yes, it's a catching song, but also more time I not understand what the young people are say. And so the clarity in diction of the song helps when there's an intergenerational appeal to
Yeah.
the song. And I'm not saying every artist needs to have an intergenerational appeal, but if virality and getting music, your young the young listeners, they might integrate the granny and the grandpas and the aunties, and if there's a music then feel like, yo, grandma, you hear a song yet, then that's kind of what they're looking for. So yeah.
Yeah, and even to that point, there are younger artists that have broken through, like Chronics and Coffee. Like those are, especially Coffee is a really good example because she's young, and she was able to bridge the gap in terms of just, like you said, being intergenerational. Like the topics of her songs aren't um far-fetched. They're
Or highly
easily,
youth focus.
yeah, they're not highly, it's youth driven because it's coming from her as a young person. However, she's
The
delivering it
content.
her style, but the
Hmm.
content and the context of what she is talking about transcends that, because me and Sanai went to a Coffee concert, and in order for her to know, if she had to know a good part of her catalog, and she's fairly new in terms of that, a younger crop of artists. So every now and again, like, we get a Busy Signal song, or we get a Agent Sasco song, or we get like something that kind of epitomizes that. So I think that the next crop of dancehall artists, they're not young, you know they're gonna have to think about that too, and their fans will have to transition with them, similarly to how we have transitioned with artists of our era. But I don't think that, because I think it feels like work, because there's just so many different ways and so many different things that we no longer feel as connected to it. And I think in part it saddens us, because it was such a huge part of who we were, that we
Were
then turn around and like, oh, now we are the
our
aunties
period,
of the
yeah.
generation. Like, what is happening that we don't know, or like, you feel yourself complaining, like, "Ah, but this isn't good, and I don't consider it good." But I also know, like, it's also the same when you've eaten really good food. You're not really gonna go back to the bad drinks. Like, you're not gonna order a whiskey sour that was like a limoncello. Like, you're not gonna order that when you've been drinking for 20 plus years. A martini that you saw on Sex in the City. Like, it's okay to grow and still yearn for that connection, but it doesn't have to be forced, I don't think.
And I get, and that's kind of what this framework, or that I'm, eventually me have to bust it in a more comprehensive way upon the people. It's not a disconnection, it's an evolution, right? We're still connected to the culture,
Say it
right?
one more
It's
time for the people then.
it's not a disconnection, it's an evolution, right? And we are moving from a place of keeping up with the music to now into a preservation mode, because we're still playing the old tracks in the way that we're playing 90s, that bad light 90s dancehall, before 90s dancehall, 80s. And I remember, you remember that some fest we did watch, I guess it was 2018, and then in interview Spraga, and Spraga did say, yeah, me now while the young people them, because when him did company scene, I remember him say same way then did talk about we too.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
like, it's just an evolution, and how we adjust to that is different, but it doesn't mean that we're lock off with ears and say we don't want to hear no more dancehall. That's not what we're saying. But we have a sound that we gravitate to, and it's not just dancehall. For me, I love R&B, and I don't listen to R&B the same way. When I did find a song that I like that is reminiscent of a particular era that I like, then I will lock into that. But it's not a thing. And I even listen to some young people who will say, this is not my style. Like, what's the concert that Bryson Tiller?
Bryson Tiller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody who was young was like, yeah, I can't get with that. And I was just like, people, at the end of the day, we have to remember that people have taste,
Yeah.
and everyone has their own taste, and they will
Hmm.
gravitate to what they like. But me not keeping up with the latest in music doesn't mean that I don't still enjoy music. It's just that how I identify with it evolved. And of course, I want to talk about the preservation stage, because that's important. I was known as the one who had the latest music and the dances, and know the latest dances. You know that I want Ethan to learn to do the dances. He has the potential, but me not know the dance them. Me not gonna know if to do the dance them. And a whole heap of video out there with dance. So who's supposed to do the dance? And that's why I was disappointed when you had told me that somebody was keeping a class to teach the young kids the new dances. They canceled that class, but it's a great opportunity. Whatever is the latest dance free craze out of Jamaica and people over there. Like, I would love Ethan to kind of catch it, because I'm not saying what I've done the place. You understand me? I
Hmm.
say,
Hmm.
but that is what I fear, that he doesn't know what
But
the
also,
latest dances
you gotta
are.
go back to, how did you learn all those dances?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
dance
it's
with the no, no, no. But what I'm saying is, we don't necessarily have to seek and force, because he'll eventually find it.
I know,
right?
no, I know
In
that.
that sense. You know what I mean? Like we had my mom, didn't force me well,
Yeah,
she
but
kind of did, but
it's different because our Walipa cousin did in the house. We don't even live the way we used to live back then.
yes.
So it's not even the same. When listen, me can count well on the 1, 2, 3, 4. Yo, I went 7, 8 away in the house one time. All of the cousin them in a one house. You're lucky if you get the four of them in a one space,
Yeah.
right? So even the way we congregate as a family is different. So yes, he will eventually see it with his friends, but right now Ethan know off of the all of the American dance them when in my party, everybody that part way and they film him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, say, why you can't do the new Jamaican one?
Exactly, exactly. Why aren't you up on the new Jamaican dance and bust the place
You're not
same
doing your
way?
cultural duty, son.
Exactly. That's you know it. You know me. You know me. You're Carrie Ann's son. You supposed to know all of the latest dance.
I
Them
know
I'm
all of them, yeah. I Ariel to take over and teach him,
Ariel. Oh my God.
The other thing I think that we have to kind of talk about is, and I say this to you all the time. I hear a lot that there's no good music.
I
And
know
I'm
that's not true.
and it's just simply not true, right? I think we also, as we age, we have to get away from the idea that there is no good music coming from our artists, because it does a disservice to the catalog that they're continuing to try to do. While you might not like it, Beanie Man is still releasing new music. That's for his fans.
Yeah.
That's for his tried and true who really want to listen and hear what he and grow with him. And
Me
I
get one
think,
alert last week. What
but I think the challenge that, particularly with dancehall, and I think hip hop is having it too, is it was built off of the youthfulness of that youthful energy. So if we look at hip hop, you look at like LL Cool J, Ja Rule, Nelly, Jay Z, like they are Nas. They all have this following, but have elevated out of the things that they used to talk about. And we as dancehall artists, like me an artist,
Vice
we
tune.
we are growing up with our generation as well. And so I think when they do release music, it is a challenge for an artist, because the hype is really with the younger artists. However, the artists that are their age, because I mean Sham, Bounty,
I think
Agent
there's an
Sasco, Vegas, they've all released music. And Spice, she's not young. She came out when we were in our teens,
Mm-mm.
early 20s. No, but she's been around since Lady Saw days, later days in the 90s.
Later days, like
Yeah,
the early
she she
2000s.
was part of that crop that in the 2000s that came up, and she really didn't get her big break until a little bit later in her life. Very similar to a lot of these artists. They're just because they've been doing music for a while, and they don't necessarily get all of their hits in their early careers and while they're young. So I think, we have to kind of consider that those artists are aging, and we owe it to them to listen to whatever they release as well. Go ahead.
But I don't think like there are two examples that come to mind. Um, I think Agent Sasco, I believe
Yes,
I've been
Agent Sasco is a
maturing with.
great, yes,
I've been
yes,
maturing with. Like
absolutely.
some gal don't like like come all the way up like
Hmm.
local. Like I feel like we're maturing on and keeping pace. And I think that's an example. Other than Buju album with this one bagger song, I think Buju also, and Sasko does it with his collaboration with Leela IK. I think Buju
Yes,
also does that in a
yeah,
different way that was always um always Buju from Voice of Jamaica, where you will see him do collaborations with John
yeah.
Legend from
Hmm.
what the girl name again,
Victoria,
Victoria Monet, right?
yeah,
And still kind of make songs like up to this day, I still play beat them, but them I go feel but like I love that song.
Yes, yes.
But there are examples, and I try to
But again,
listen.
you're a music person, right? And I
Right,
think we got to also look at it from the everyday person who
right.
doesn't like you're looking out for it because it's still of interest to you. Like
Mm-hmm,
passive listening just doesn't move the needle for anybody in our category.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think we also, when and you can it's better to talk about not liking it than just not saying anything. You know
Anything,
what I
yeah.
mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's like you and I talk about it all the time. If you're just releasing to crickets, then I'm gonna go where I'm gonna get the response. And if
Yeah,
the young people are responding, even though I'm older, I'm
you're gonna
gonna
play
go
young
there
people
because
music.
that's exactly where I'm getting the best response. Like everybody isn't going like I think Beanie Man is in that weird space of he's not necessarily getting the response from his core fans, but he also isn't saying much that is new or relevant to his target audience. And so he's trying to rally back for the young people, and the young people is like, nah, come out there, you're too old for this, for do this. And I think that's really what is happening. But they also like, artists got egos, so it's like I don't know.
Well,
I
Beanie
don't
Man a
know.
veteran from 19 oh long, and some
He
Nickelary come up
is.
and come this big man them fi know. Inna the business man a foundation. I sing. Man a bad man from how long? From 19 oh strong. Inna everything. All right. No, listen. Yeah, come
Yes,
over to
DJ,
studio.
carry on.
But I think overall, as we are maturing, our cultural identity is shifting, but it's not a loss. It's just evolving, and how we then move to passing down culture. And again, an example is me wanting my son to be able to do the latest dance moves. Even my mother would call, because we know he danced, right? So my mom would constantly, Ethan, you know how to do the new dance? Because growing up, the adults watched us dancing, so she's like waiting to watch him do the dance. When he doing the this whatever drill dance and all this stuff, and I'm like, all right, I see you can move, but which part the movement there? You know how much work I had to do to teach him Jenna Box back in the day. You know this, right? I get all the videos. All right, come, let's do it.
Line up.
Line up. Let's do this. And he
And you're
caught
like,
it.
1, 2, 3, Jenna
Exact.
bounce, Jenna
Jenna
bounce,
Box.
Jenna bounce.
Like, and he got it. And I was recording him, and I would say, look, because
Your foot up and go lean,
the
so
exactly, dancer to dancer, you understood. We have to get it right. So it's about how are we passing some of this culture to the kids. So it goes away from us consuming it, and to us, handing it over, or trying to pass it off to our kids. And
yeah.
I've seen how that works, where my nephew, we say, Auntie Kerry, like he forces this deep Jamaican wagwan auntie, and try to do these dance and say, why all of the Jamaican man them pose like this? Like, so they're catching aspects of it, but the parts that I really want them to get, like, yo, even my cousin came here and said, all right, Ethan, to do this dance. All right, we have to go to the basics. You have to know for the bogle, right? It's almost like, and I want people to understand that the minute you can do bogle and you can move your body a certain way, you're able to do most of the other dance them.
Yeah.
Right.
They're simplistic in a sense. It's just the
Exactly.
makeup.
And these
Yeah.
newer dances are just a reconstruction of some of these older
Yeah.
dances.
Yeah.
So once you can do bogle at a very minimum, right? Um, you know, I feel like that's just a like in
You know
ballet you
what we
have
did not talk about?
what?
The visual elements.
Which visual element that no?
Videos.
I mean, but
Like
we
the
did.
way the way the way that we used to convene to watch videos, whether it
Um,
be party DVDs, videos on TV, video music box, Caribbean rhythms, all of
well,
those, like those that just doesn't happen.
but also
Like
I come from an era where that wasn't a thing. The biggest, I mean, there are many videos you used to watch at Jamaica, but I don't think that, when on Saturday in Jamaica, you'd have something on JBC called Music, Music, Music. And that's where you got all the videos, not just Jamaican videos. So I remember certain videos, but it
Yeah.
wasn't tied to the video. I think
I think
what
maybe that was a diaspora thing
it's a
then.
diaspora thing for
Yeah.
sure. I was
Yeah.
okay without the video, but that all changed with two videos. One, Shabba Trailer Lord, and Shaka Demus and Pliers Murder She Wrote, because
Hmm.
they were, I hate to say this, but I'm just going to use the term that people were responding. It looked foreign, like in the production quality or the production value.
Yeah.
You could see that that was um yeah, it was Shabba's Trailer Load and then ending Tingaling. And then it was also around the time with Shaka Demus Empire Murder She Wrote, right? So those videos had this very high production value that people are like, whoa. Yeah. And now we were, paying attention to dancehall videos specifically. And no,
Hmm.
I said dancehall videos because Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers been making videos, but
Hmm.
that's reggae and that's always been treated separately
Yeah.
versus dancehall videos that had like this high production value in terms of the music videos.
Yeah. There's definitely a whole era of Sean Paul videos, Elephant Man
Give
videos.
me the lights.
Give it a lot.
I think every
Those.
generation, every decade
Yeah.
has a defining video, and I think the Triller Lord and video and the Shaka Demus and Pliers, and then if we move it, the Give Me the Light video set off a whole new
A
set of
whole new set
visuals.
of
Yeah,
visuals. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then even like before that, like I remember watching um party video, like
bus
DVDs.
ride videos. Yes,
Yeah,
Ouch
all of
Crew
those
them go.
things.
Yep,
Yeah. So I think like, and we used to like, sit and watch and see who we're gonna see and
at
that
a
kind of thing.
dance.
Like those things just nostalgically don't really happen anymore. So it kind of goes back to like, also like, where are the spaces and places where you consume in community to kind of discover
Yeah,
the dance and the dance portion of the culture
yeah.
that is music. So I think everything has shifted, and I think we're just finding new ways based off how technology has shifted, how to consume and share and keep up, quote unquote. But I don't necessarily think what keeping up. I think we're trying. We can make a concerted effort to do a little bit more, but I do think some of the technological advances help with the discovery. But again, we're a generation that is used to being fed, and in this current climate, it's almost like you have to find.
And I also want to say there's exceptions to the rule, right? In terms of we might want to be, but I guess he would also fall into your category that it's kind of his job to keep up with music. There are some people our age that will keep up with music. May I talk about my name again? um Sean, right? They will keep up
Yeah,
with the new music, the new artists. But again, I think I bucket him as that's part of his role or what he
yeah,
does for his community. But
yeah,
not everyone is like, oh, I can't keep up. So you have those who aren't music heads, but they just want to feel us, make sure that they're still connected to culture, right?
yeah,
And then you're those who are like, all right, I love music, I'm a music head, and those who are like, all right, this is industry, this is part of the job. But again, all of that to say is there are different ways, like you said, juggling is gone. I think one way DJs can mix it up a little bit. We went to an event and, they were playing all the good music when me sit down and I eat. And I'm like, mix up some of that, because if you look into the audience, I know pure spring chicken in other place, some big people. So when people are sitting down and enjoying their meals, it's a balance between a particular pace of music, but that's also when you introduce some new songs, because I feel like they can sit and listen and say, what kind of song this, and
Yeah.
then you run it back if it's a dance tune a little bit later. But we can't go from the way that DJ a select music, that you start with your early warm and the older tunes and work your way up to the newer tunes. You can't really do that when you have like a mixed crowd or a dinner thing where you have bigger people. You have to kind of flip that mix, or how you juggle a little bit around, like you front load some of the newer songs when people are sit down and a mill around before the things start, and you get to play it again. So that's just a thought from me.
All right, my peeps, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Carrie Ann, thank you for lending your time as well. I appreciate you always for coming and
Always.
chatting to the people then.
I appreciate being invited.
Well, until next time, later, my peeps.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Style and Vibes podcast. If you like what you hear, and I know you do, share it with your friends and family. If you want more, make sure you visit styleandvibes.com and follow us on our social channels, Twitter and Instagram at Style and Vibes. Until next time, later, my peeps.